Welcome, friends, to the Someone Gets Me podcast. I am your host, Dianne A, and I am so delighted that you're here. This podcast was created because I believe there is a visionary leader inside each one of us who is waiting to be seen. In each episode of Someone Gets Me, you will hear useful tips from successful visionaries who will share their stories about how being seen has allowed them to take their vision out into the world with action. Embracing your depth in a surface level world. Friends, it's Dianne here at Someone Gets Me, and today we're talking about your depth, who you are as a deep, nuanced being in a world that is often very surface and unfulfilling on some levels, right? So I'm thinking about times that we've all been in conversations or in groups of people where maybe we even interacted for a while, but we walk away from the interaction either feeling tired, more tired, or strangely kind of with some existential loneliness, like that interaction was not very fulfilling, or maybe we didn't meet our desires for depth or whatever. Maybe we can't even put our finger on it, but we know that there wasn't an authentic, like real connection. And I think that when you are neurodivergent and you have overexcitabilities as a gifted person or whatever the constellation is, that your depth is an important part of who you are. And so therefore you want to embrace that part of you, right? But we live in a world that's so superficial that sometimes it's really hard. I mean, I think it's really hard sometimes. And so a lot of people think that when I'm talking about depth in a superficial world, I'm talking about smart people only, like the geeky smart people. But that's not what I'm talking about exactly. And there are smart people who do superficial things, right? But what I'm talking about is the person who is deeply curious, who can look for meaning in ways in that are underneath the surface of things, right? That ask the second and third questions in a line of trying to understand. Or maybe you're one of those people who desires authentic, real connection with others. That it's not the numbers of people, it's the quality of your connection. And so there's a depth there. Or maybe you're one of those people that I see a lot of in my work, where you have a depth of complexity, where there's a lot of nuance and there's things about you and you use language in a way that isn't necessarily typical but has great meanings, right? And so maybe you're one of those people who are deep, who are good at reflection. Like I have some friends of mine that meditate very deeply, and they have an appreciation for the depth of that deep inner reflection. And all of these are different examples of people who have depth that are related to intelligence, but not only intelligence. And then, of course, we always want to include in our conversation of depth the people who have deep emotional intuition and understanding of things, that richness of how they experience the world. I live a lot off my intuition and my depth. And what I find when I'm around people who are living in the superficial realm of things, so we're living in a different level, and neither is better or worse. It's just different. And what I notice is that I can say something and that person might think they understand me, and they do understand me based on their paradigm. However, it's not exactly what I was trying to say. There was a situation in my work quite a while ago where I was placed in a situation by another medical professional that wasn't really safe. There was a client who was aggressive and verbally assaulting, and the two of us as professionals were in the room trying to assist this person who clearly had a lot of anger and resentment. And the other medical professional, who actually was the one leading the team in this situation, actually walked out of the room and left me alone with a hostile person and another person who was really angry, with no way to have called for help if I wanted to. And they were between me and the door. Now, fortunately, I have great skills and nothing happened. But the point is that when that person was confronted about leaving somebody in a dangerous situation, they had no clue about it, no concern, no care, didn't see anything with that at all. And that is somebody who's living on the surface and living in a level of denial and not really paying attention to all the different levels and all of the different complexities in things that are happening in their world. And when you're in the medical environment, there are lots of levels happening all at the same time. So there's always these kinds of differences. Now, the interesting thing is, as somebody who has this level of depth like I do, I could energetically and intuitively feel what was happening with the other people in the room, including the other professional who walked out. And I knew what was going on. That person was afraid of conflict, didn't want to deal with it, and went somewhere else instead of handling the situation the way they were supposed to. And so I knew that's what they were doing, and I knew I could handle it. So it wasn't about me. It was me observing that this person who claims to be able to do that was not able to do that. So that's a learning experience for all of us, right? And that's how I like to look at things. It's like I'm always looking at all the different levels and nuances and those kinds of things. Because people who have a lot of depth, and I know you're going to be able to relate to this, can often have some existential loneliness. And that's why I'm even doing this particular episode, because I've had many people who I work with mention to me about this level of existential loneliness because they have a different level of depth. And one of the things that I'm finding very common recently in some of the men that I'm working with is that they have a level of depth of emotion and a high intelligence. And so that not only are they smart and they have high intelligence and they can do data synthesis and all of that very quickly, they're also very emotional and intense in their intuition. And so that's a very interesting balance that most people don't understand what to do with, especially when it's in a man, because we don't expect that, though there are many men like that. And so the judgment of others creates an existential loneliness for some of these people. So we're working through how they can be seen in a way that's valuable to them without having to fly flags, right? Like just be their regular self. So the world is wanting us to answer texts right away, answer phones right away, move really fast, have speed, do things quickly, even if it's not deep. I was talking to some musicians the other day, and we were talking about how when we listen to the music that was recorded analog without any electronics and compression and synthesizing and AI and stuff, the old analog things on the old LPs and the old 45s, right? And we could listen to that music, or when you listen to it live and it's not altered, right? There's a different level of depth and connection. I mean, I can get goosebumps thinking about some of the beauty of some of the music I used to listen to. And I can listen to the same song now, compressed and changed in its format, and it does not have the same depth and richness. So we live in a society that has gradually gone toward this superficiality. And for some of us, that's not very healthy, and it doesn't really work, because we live off complexity and nuance and reflection. We have more patience, and that's not necessarily something that is rewarded in our culture all the time. And so there's a little bit of a mismatch, or an opportunity for the mismatch, if we're not really paying attention. So we get told things like, don't ask a whole lot of questions and keep everything to yourself and don't overthink it. I think I get accused of overthinking and being too sensitive so frequently that I can almost predict it coming out of somebody's mouth. Well, the truth is I am very sensitive. And the truth is I am also very intuitive. And the truth is I have a fast thinking mind, and I do think a lot. And I'm a gifted person with a very strong sense of justice. And so sometimes that thinking and that ADHD and that justice will get going. Does that mean that there's something wrong with me? No, it means that that's how my brain works. Your brain might work differently, and that's how your brain works. The way I look at something, if it's not working, if your brain works in a certain way and it's not working in your life and it's causing you trouble, then that's when we need to look at doing something about it. Otherwise, we need to learn about how our own system is made and live within that, which is not all that hard. It's not all that hard, because when people tell me I'm overthinking, I might say, yeah, I am. Or I might say, well, actually, I'm just feeling into it. And half the time, people may or may not believe what I can sense or feel or know, but they will once it shows up. And it's not about them. It's about me. Okay. So it's not about the other people in your world. It's about you. It's about, what are you understanding? What are the nuances and feelings and expressions and depth that you desire? And how are you getting those needs met and feeling fulfilled? Because there is a very real cost if you shrink. There's a very real danger when you hide who you are and you hide your interests and you pretend like you're something you're not, trying to be superficial, right? It doesn't work very long, and you pay the price. You either pay the price in depression or anxiety, or maybe you make your blood pressure get high because you're holding everything in, or you get stomach problems, or you start distancing yourself from people who are deep. All those things. You lose some of the precision in your speech because you're just speaking generalities in order to fit in. All of those things are a cost for you. And so a lot of times we want to ask ourselves, what is the cost in the situation? Sometimes if, when you're in Rome, do as the Romans do, you might want to do that, but you don't want to do it habitually. And you also don't want to get yourself caught in a situation where that's all you're around. Sometimes I'll just speak my regular way, and somebody might say, well, you're going to have to define some of those words or explain what you mean. And I'm happy to do that. And I know that not everybody has the same vocabulary set as me. And there's a lot of people who I have to ask them to define words they're using. It's totally okay. That's called interdependent communication, right? So when we're constantly, like playing small, when we're constantly trying to fit in with a superficial society or a superficial workplace or whatever the group is, and we're trying to do that, and we're hiding who we really are inside with our depth and our nuance and our understanding, then we end up creating problems for ourselves, problems of loneliness, problems of disconnection, and sometimes it even creates other issues, because we're not meant to be alone. We're meant to be connected with others of the same species. That's a neurological situation here. So if you keep yourself on one level and you're supposed to be on another level, whatever those levels look like, you are going to end up a mess if you do not start to honor who you really are. Like, a lot of the work I do with people is how to get out of overwhelm and how to get out of these situations where they have compromised who they are knowingly or unknowingly, or played a superficial role when there's really way more going on, and how to step into their own sovereignty. A lot of the people I work with, it's about owning who they are and stepping into their sovereignty. Now, they might get to me because they're anxious or depressed or having a hard time at work, or they're drinking too much or something. And the core is they lost themselves somewhere in the translation. And often they lost themselves when they were very young, because they were told they were too sensitive or too much or too smart, and either over rewarded or made fun of and shamed. But the same thing happens as the person starts to water down their own essence. And then as you get older, that pain is burdening the entire system. All of your being, your body, your emotions, your spiritual self, your mental health, all of you pays the price. And so part of our journey of transforming and coming into who we are is realizing all those spots where we watered ourselves down, all of those times where we listened to outside influence that may or may not have really understood who we were, and all of those times that we made judgments about ourselves without really having an understanding. And start to come back home to ourselves in a way where we could understand who we are, what we bring to the table, how we can be more interdependent, and how we can allow ourselves to be fluid and flexible in a world that is very fast moving and superficial, when often we're a little bit more kind of patient and move at a different pace. Because your depth is not all of who you are. It's not only being intense. it has to do with that nuance of questions of thinking on a 2 and 3 and 4 question down level. It's like, can we look at any situation, including our own lives, and look at all the different levels of it? It's kind of like being an archaeologist, I think. And it's easy to feel overwhelmed, and it's sometimes easy to feel resentful. And so that's why we need that people in our world that understand depth and understand our intensity and understand these kinds of things, so that we don't get ourselves caught in an over processing, overthinking loop all the time, because that's exhaustion. And then you end up with a fatigue and exhaustion that doesn't serve you very well. And we don't want to do that. We want to be happy and healthy and have lots of energy. Now, I know when I get stuck in an overthinking loop, which happens to me, I can get stuck in it. And my relationships are important to me, and my friendships are important. So if there's things that feel weird, then I can get stuck in an overthinking loop. So it's important for me to have people in my circle that I can talk to about these things and things I can understand, and people that understand this part of me, knowing it's not a deficiency, it's a part of me that gets going. And how do we slow it down a little bit and come out of the loop in order to then be freed? And that's what I do with a lot of my people. And then things that I help them with is come out of that loop, right? Because our experience as a neurodivergent person, your experience, my experience, is one of intensity and curiosity and asking a lot of questions and wanting to know things and putting things together that maybe other people may not put together, like events and ideas or a look on someone's face or things like that. We can see things that a lot of times others can't see, and maybe they're not meant to see it, but that doesn't mean we can't, right? Like, we're not wrong for seeing it. We also, for the majority of us anyway, are really good at these big picture awarenesses. Like, I'm a very good visionary. I can see the big picture and then I can dial into what needs to happen. But sometimes with ADHD, it makes it a little tricky to do the action to go with what I know should happen from seeing the big picture. This is where interdependence and having other people in our world helps out. And that's why body doubling is so valuable to people with ADHD. That's why having a brain trust or an inner circle of people who have a deeper understanding will really help you stay focused and stay on task and accentuate your assets and get a support and assistance in the things where you're not so hot at, because we're not all hot at everything, nor should we be. You're also, if you're like me, and I'm thinking you might be, emotionally complex. So a lot of times somebody will say, oh, well, you're mad, or you're this, or you're that. And I'm like, well, there's probably more than one level about it. If we're feeling angry, then we're also probably feeling some pain and maybe even a little fear. And there's different kinds of pain and there's different levels of it. And there's different kinds of anger and different levels of that. And how we process and work through things can be much more complex in some linear line. So we want to make friends with that complexity and release the idea that we have to expect ourselves to get to every answer all the time really fast. Because really, in your depth of who you are, it might take a little bit more patience or a little bit more journaling time or reflection time or conversation with another who understands you in order to really get that awareness and lock it into your intention and your attention so that you know how to take the right action. It could take more steps because you're not superficial and you're not going really fast and speeding through life. It's kind of like the difference between going down the highway at 70 miles an hour and going down the country road at 30. You see completely different scenery. You have a different experience. I go on a lot of road trips, and when I'm driving really fast and I'm like just getting to where I'm going, that's really all my experience is. When I get there, I got there, great. And if I'm going on a road trip and I don't have a time reference and I can take my time, I might exit and go check out things, or I'll notice some of the scenery around me because I'm not driving with only this railroad focus toward the destination. I'm looking at the big picture. I'm looking at the beauty of the scenery that I'm driving through, and I'm appreciating all that's around me, which is a whole different experience than being on this railroad track mission without any flexibility at all. So when you have a depth of experience, often there's more than one thing happening at the same time. So this is when it's important to realize that not everybody is meant to grow with you and go with you. Not everybody is able to go with us on whatever journey we're going on, right? And we're not able to go with everybody. I have some people who had been in my life at different junctures that were really close to me at one point, and they're not close to me now. And it's not because they're wrong or I'm wrong. It's because we have differences and we've grown in different ways because of the nuances and the complexity of who neurodivergent people are. And so it's about being willing to live in the moment, honor all of our relationships for everything they've ever given us. Even the most painful relationships have given you a great gift. That does not mean you go back into the lion's den. It does not mean you put yourself in harm's way, but it does mean that you give yourself permission to feel all your feelings and take the lesson with you. Take what you learned from any situation with you forward so you can move on. As long as you're holding on to unresolved grief or resentment and you're making it your identity, you are stunting your own growth. So it's important to honor your experience, honor your autobiography, and at the same time, let yourself, I'm trying to think of the right word, emerge into something that's even more and more beautiful, because the inner you is trying to emerge all the time. And if we keep squashing it down because we're resentful or angry, then we're missing some of the most beautiful moments of our lives, and we don't want to miss them. We don't want to miss them, or at least I don't want to miss them. I don't think you do either. So the solution for all of us, I guess, to wrap all this kind of in a bow, is not about getting rid of your depth. It's not about being more superficial. It's not about denying all of these really amazing nuances of you. It is about honoring those things. It's also about honoring how every human being that you come in contact with is going to have a different constellation and a different expression and a different understanding. People who've done a lot of work on themselves and have a lot of awareness and understanding are going to experience their neurodivergence and their giftedness and their sensitivity very differently than somebody who doesn't even know it's a thing yet. So it's our responsibility to be patient and compassionate and kind and loving to ourselves and to others. Our discernment is about who is traveling with us at this juncture on our road, who's traveling with us. And not everybody travels with you on the whole road, and that's okay. You're not meant to travel with everybody else on their road either. What matters is that you speak with integrity and honesty, and you do the best you can in communicating, and that you don't allow yourself to get pulled into conversations that can get flipped around and made it sound like you're the issue, right? Be careful on holding on to your own sovereignty and your own integrity. Be aware that not everybody has the level of understanding you do, and that's okay. See, the thing that so many superficial people do is they're quick to judge, and they're quick to think they know what other people's motives are. And when you start assigning motives to other people, or assigning what you think it is that they're thinking or doing, and you don't know that, that's being superficial, and you're going to be wrong most of the time, even if you know the person really well, because we don't know everything about everybody. In fact, we all don't know everything about ourselves half the time, right? So this depth that you have is a great advantage of yours. It makes you a really good leader if you want to be a leader. It makes you a good leader because you can see all the different levels. Now, it takes some work for yourself, right, to do that, and to learn how to hone these skills and to build on them. And it will make you a good leader if you want to be. The key is, do you want to be? Because just because you have depth and understanding and intelligence and intuition, and people see the leadership ability in you, does not mean that you're required to be one, right? And sometimes you're a leader without having the title or position, which makes it even more fun. So just be aware that you have a lot of assets that you're bringing to the table that other people can see that for you are just so normal, you may not notice them all right away. And that's okay too. It's always a learning experience. Every day I learn something new about me and about others. Every day. There's no day that doesn't go by that I don't learn something. And sometimes it's a big aha, and sometimes it's oh, well, I didn't see it that way. All of it is valuable, because the key, I think, is that we don't go around our in our lives apologizing for who we are. Like when I was in high school and in the beginning of my college years, I spent a lot of time internally and probably out loud too, apologizing for who I was. I remember I think I was a senior in high school, and I was in an event, and people were introducing themselves to each other. Like I didn't know the people there, it was other students, but I didn't know them. And I was so introverted and so shut down from shame, from the violence in my family system and the narcissism. I was so shut down that I could barely utter my name. I could say Dianne, and it came out very choppy and hard to say. And Alan almost didn't ever come out. And it was very difficult for me. And because I was in my mind apologizing for who I was because of how much fun I was made of and how I was attacked in multiple different ways in my life before that. And I found myself becoming aware shortly after that experience of the fact that I was apologizing for my own existence all the time, when there was nothing to apologize for, but it was all of the parts of the autobiography and the experiences that got internalized in a way that wasn't serving me, until I went into that area of my life and did some rectifying of the story I was telling myself and of how I was going to move forward into what is possible for my world. So we get to the place where we're not apologizing anymore. And we also get to the place where we don't have the kind of shame where we over exaggerate and make ourselves bigger than life, when we really want to be down to earth and just regular, deep, meaningful people with integrity and honesty. Now, I had English teacher at the University of Florida, and he was really cool. One of the things he said is it's not bragging if it's true. So a lot of people say, well, I don't want to brag, and humility means of the earth. It doesn't mean to be walked on. And if it's true, if you've done something really amazing and that's true, that's great. What matters is that you don't cheapen other people along with it. Anyway, if any of this is resonating with you, I am happy about that. If it's new information, great. If it's reminding you of your own beauty and greatness and essence, oh, that is so beautiful. I invite you to join my Someone Gets Me community in Facebook. And if you have any requests for any topics that you would like from any of my podcast episodes, or for me to cover in my Sunday night lives, please let me know. I am happy to look into any topics that are suggested and see how I can bring something of value to you. Thank you for listening to Someone Gets Me, and thank you for being part of my world. It means so much to me. And so remember, in the meantime, to put your face to the sun so the shadows fall behind you, because you're a rock star. You're here on purpose with a mighty purpose. And so go out there and let your light shine. Appreciate your depth. Allow yourself to be who you're meant to be. And until the next episode of Someone Gets Me, this is Dianne saying, be well. Thank you for listening. I trust you gained some valuable inspiration and information. Please join me and other visionaries in the Someone Gets Me Facebook group. Or for more information on my services and additional episodes, visit someonegetsme.com. Again, thanks for listening.